He danced as if the stars weren't watching, as if her daughter wasn't broken, and neither was he. The Empress of the Vran Dominion stood high above the obsidian ballroom. Veiled in fractal armor and imperial silence, her throne hovered amid spiraling graph sculptures, surrounded by whispers and fear. Below, the last remnants of humanity served drinks in perfect obedience, once a mighty species, now a relic dressed in black aprons and branded neckbands. Cole Mercer had learned to keep his eyes low, his voice lower, and his hope buried. Born on Ceres Station in the aftermath of the fall, he had never seen Earth. He had heard its name only in lullabies whispered by the older servers, a myth wrapped in ash. The Vran had taken it in a week, burned the oceans, shattered the moon, unleashed their biomechs on every continent. Humanity hadn't even gotten to plead. Cole didn't care about rebellion anymore. That dream had died with his brother at the Newvold massacre. Now he carried trays of pheromone stabilizers and fruit spores in silence. Tonight, though, something was different. The ballroom thrummed with artificial gravity, tuned to Vran elegance, slow, sweeping movements. Like underwater monarchs, alien nobility glided across the crystal floor, their bodies like silk wrapped in exoskeletal gold. 1,000 non-human eyes blinked at intervals incomprehensible to the human mind, and at the center of them all, untouched, unmoving, sat her, Princess Kiri, daughter of the Empress, the fractured heir, as they called her, half Vran, half something else. They said she'd been damaged during birthing. Her limbs moved slow, stiff. Her neural lattice couldn't bond with their hive systems. She couldn't dance, could barely speak. To the court, she was an embarrassment. To Cole, she looked alone. She sat in her hover chair, one hand trembling gently as it tried to mimic the music's rhythm. The Vran ignored her. Even her mother, the Empress, regarded her with silent calculation, not cruelty, not care, just indifference. That was when it happened. The music shifted. The servers rotated stations. Cole was assigned to the central dais, just meters from the girl. He placed the tray down on the luminous pedestal and caught her eyes. They weren't Vran eyes. Those cold, multi-lens things. No, hers were brown, human, or close to it. She looked at him, not through him. That alone was enough to make him forget protocol. You like the music, he whispered, barely audible. Her hand trembled in reply, mimicking a swirl, a dance, gesture. She couldn't form the words, but he understood. She wanted to. A surge moved through him then, reckless and ancient. He didn't know where it came from. Maybe from Earth, maybe from something deeper. Without thinking, he stepped away from the pedestal. He turned to her, and he bowed, not the Vran way, the human way. Hand across his chest, low, respectful, sincere. Gasps echoed. The music stopped. Silence cracked like ice. All eyes Vran, robotic, other, turned. The Empress tilted her head, slow and dangerous, but her daughter smiled, and in that silence, Cole Mercer, human, server, orphan of a dead planet, extended his hand. May I have this dance, princess? The court was frozen. The guards didn't move. The Empress raised one hand just slightly, and the sentinel mechs paused mid-stride. The girl's trembling fingers reached out, touched his. The ballroom, reconfigured, grab plates tilting, lights dimming. Cole took her into the center. She moved clumsily in her hover chair. He adapted, fluid, one foot forward, one hand guiding hers. He led, gently, gracefully, not with force, but with rhythm, with invitation, and she danced. Not like the Vran, not like their perfect symmetry. She danced with stutters, with joy, with broken beauty. Tears welled in the Empress's eyes, the first into centuries. Because for the first time since Kirai's birth, she wasn't just a crippled heir. She was radiant, and it was a human who made her so. Cole's eyes never left the girls. The music swelled again and around them. The court watched in absolute silence. At the edge of the platform, unseen by all, a small covert drone blinked red, recording, transmitting. Somewhere across the galaxy, a fractured resistance intercepted the signal, and for the first time in 10 years, the flame of Earth flickered back to life. They didn't kill him that night, which meant something far worse was coming. Cole Mercer stood in the servants' barracks beneath the royal citadel, his pulse echoing louder than the security buzzers. He expected to be vaporized the moment the dance ended, but the guards never came. The Empress had simply stood, motionless, as her daughter clung to his hand, and then vanished into her chambers. Now, hours later, Cole sat alone, his hands still shaking from the dance, not from fear, from memory. He remembered how Kira had looked at him, not as a pet, not as a server, but as something real, human. But he also remembered the Empress's eyes, not tearful, analytical, cold, calculating. She was thinking, and that terrified him more than any blade. Across the Vran capital, aboard a moon-sized orbital known as the Bloom, a meeting convened behind refractive barriers. There were no walls, just coiling gravity rings and flowing Dayton nerve corridors. 6 Vran War nobles hovered in a sphere of suspended light, their language formed from color pulses and nerve spikes. The human violated sacred form. He touched her, initiated contact. It stirred something in the Empress. Shall we purge the human strain again? No. That would confirm weakness, that we find the flaw, eradicate the spark. Above them, a shadow rippled. It had no name, only a title, the Mind Claw. It had silenced 12 planetary insurrections. Now, it was watching Earth's last echo. Meanwhile, Cole was summoned, not arrested, not executed, summoned. Vran honor guards led him through rose-gold halls of living stone, where walls pulsed with faint bioluminescent veins. The throne room was emptier than before, quiet, more dangerous. At the center sat the Empress, her body fused with the throne itself, eyes like black suns, a face carved in dignity, unreadable and absolute, and beside her, Kira. She looked up at him the moment he entered. Her eyes smiled, but her fingers twitched nervously. She knew something was wrong. The Empress raised one hand. "You are not only a server," she said. Her voice was layered, alien resonance twisted with perfect galactic common. That movement, that ritual, that defiance, it is ancient. I have seen it before. Cole straightened but didn't reply. Speaking without permission was death. He knew that. But she continued, "You humans carry memory in motion, emotion, in rhythm, a species of song and scars." She leaned forward. "We silenced your screams, but not your dances." Kirai's hand reached toward him, small and trembling. "I'd have decided," the Empress said. "You will not be purged." Cole blinked. "You will serve as her companion, entertain her, move with her, make her smile." The command chilled him. It wasn't mercy. It was control. He bowed low, jaw clenched. "As you command, Empress." As he turned to leave, she spoke again. "And if you fail, I will not kill you." She let the implication hang like a guillotine. That night, the Resistance received the full transmission aboard the shattered dreadnought Athena's wake. Drifting in a dark nebula, General Idris Harlan watched the grainy footage of Cole Mercer dancing with the Vran air. A spark flickered in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. "Hope, give me a Laracan." He growled. "She's off the grid," the officer replied. "Then find her. The last time we sent a signal into the Empire, we lost 7 crews. This time, they sent us a signal." He stared at Cole's boat form on the screen. "We might have a way-in." Back on Vran Prime, days passed. Cole became more than a server. He was visible now. Royal attendants reprogrammed his uniform. They implanted a proximity chip in his spine, enough pain to kill if he stepped out of line, but not enough to restrain. Every morning, he was brought to Princess Kirai's chambers, and they danced. Slowly, awkwardly at first. She struggled with her coordination, but he adjusted. They moved to ancient Terran ballads, downloaded secretly from a rusted artifact, hidden beneath the palace's data vaults. He sang once, and she cried. That night, he nearly did too. He didn't realize what was happening, not fully, but something inside her was waking, and in turn, something inside him. She wasn't a monster. She was a child, half human, half Ran, despised by her own kind, isolated in silence. But now she had a partner, a friend, and the galaxy was watching, because unknown to them, both, dozens of rebel eyes had now infiltrated the Vran data streams. The footage of their dances, their bond, had spread to the hidden pockets of surviving humanity across the stars. In every underground colony, on every derelict station, a single phrase began to reappear: "We are not forgotten." But not all who watched celebrated, because in the deep military hives of the Dominion, the Mind Cloud prepared something ancient, something forbidden. If humanity remembered what it meant to dance, then the Vran would teach them what it meant to burn. He danced with her in secret, unaware that every step echoed through the ashes of Earth. The galaxy didn't shift all at once, but whispers began, on hidden relay moons, in deep-cracked mining colonies, in air-scraped shuttles hiding between rogue comets. Humans watched. The recordings of Cole and Princess Kire, grainy and forbidden, moved like fire through frost. A human server, Ave ran air, dancing, no fear, no chains, just rhythm, just humanity. The footage should have been scrubbed, purged from the network, but someone inside the Dominion had let it leak. Not sabotage, signal. An old Terran word began to return, like a breath in the cold. Hope. Cole didn't know any of this. He only knew the silence was growing shorter between them. Princess Kire no longer hesitated when he offered his hand. She laughed now, soft, unsure, but real. Her movements had improved, her neural tremors reduced. The Vran medic said her cortical resonance had stabilized, but Cole knew the truth. It wasn't medicine, it was connection. One night, under the palace's artificial stars, she used her voice. Not perfectly, Vran vocal cords weren't made for Terran syllables, but she tried. D-Dan, cease? His breath caught. He nodded, swallowing the emotion in his throat. Yeah, dance. They moved together, alone, no court, no guards, just the broken pieces finding rhythm in each other, far away, on a backwater moon orbiting the fractured gas giant Tyrus 9. A resistance scout named Alara Ken decoded the latest packet. She was once one of Earth's finest neural hackers, now reduced to stealing oxygen filters off Vran patrol ships. But this was different. She watched the footage again, slower this time, not for emotion, for intel. Her eyes traced the background of the ballroom, reflected light patterns, architecture curvature, neural delay ticks in the Vran servers. Operating the hover cam. Got you, she muttered. She activated a secure channel, Athena's wake. This is Ken. We found our way in. General Idris Harlan's voice returned, static choked. Are you suggesting infiltration of the palace? I'm not suggesting, she snapped. I'm initiating. The girl's half human. Her bond to the server's real. We can use it. What if it's bait? Then we die trying. Better than dying forgotten. Inside the Dominion, change was beginning to stir, not just among humans, among the Vran. Some nobles were furious, others curious. The Empress received hundreds of secret transmissions from distant sectors. Some warned, some begged, others asked for more footage. Some Vran had daughters, sons, broken ones, outcasts. They saw themselves in Kire now, not as shame, but as possibility. The dance was not just rebellion, it was contagion. Cole learned something was shifting when the guards stopped watching him so closely. The Empress allowed him full access to the palace gardens, even without escort. His status had changed, not by choice, by use. He was useful now. He didn't trust it. Late one night, while helping Kire with a new sequence, something like an old Earth waltz, but with altered gravity pulses, he whispered low, "They're watching us, not for protection, for something else." Kirai's head tilted. Her face was a mask of curiosity. "Why, watch." He hesitated. "They want to see if I'll mess up, or if you'll change." She reached out, gently, and pressed a small, trembling hand to his chest. "Why you change, too?" He stared at her, this hybrid girl, this unwanted heir. She had seen more truth in him than anyone since his brother. "Yeah," he murmured. "I think I am." Then came the moment everything changed. It happened. In the Temple of Resonance, a sacred chamber within the palace, where no non-Vran had ever entered. Cole was led there blindfolded, Kire beside him in silence. When they entered, the air buzzed with psychic static, the floor vibrated like a heartbeat, and there, standing before a living altar of light, was the Empress. She spoke without sound. The room vibrated with her will. "My daughter speaks your name in her sleep." Cole tensed. He said nothing. She no longer fears the dark. She no longer fears herself. The Empress stepped closer. The grav fields bent. "You are not a soldier. You are not brilliant. You are not exceptional. And yet, you have shifted my daughter's core." Cole breathed slowly. "Because I treated her like she mattered. She is Vran. She is mine. She's also half human." A long silence fell. Then, to his shock, the Empress smiled, a terrifying, regal smile. "She has asked to see Earth." Cole's heart stopped. "We will go," the Empress said. You will accompany us, not because I trust you, but because she does. And if I refuse, she leaned in, voice like a blade, then I erase every flicker of your kind from the stars. Back on Athena's wake, Alara received the message she'd been waiting for. A scout ship from the Dominion was headed toward Earth's grave. Aboard it, the Empress, her heir, and the last human servant permitted to stand beside a throne. She smiled coldly, prepped the strike team. We go dark. We intercept, because for the first time in decades, a Vran vessel was heading toward the ashes of Earth, and humanity wasn't going to watch from the shadows anymore. They expected to find a dead world. What they found was a heartbeat buried in the ash. The Vran scout cruiser, Seraf's grasp, broke through the last of Sol's radiation belts in a silent glide, its hull refracting starlight like ripples in oil. It had been 3 decades since a Vran ship had entered Earth's system. The last time was for extermination. Now they came with curiosity, caution, and a princess who'd begun to smile. Cole stood near the viewport, hands clasped behind his back. He hadn't spoken for 3 hours. Earth was below them now, gray, fractured, oceanless. Its surface looked like ash frozen in time, with orbital scars still visible from the Vran kinetic strikes. No birds, no wind, no life, just memory. And yet, his heart thundered. Behind him, Princess Kyrie floated in her mobility cradle, eyes wide. She pressed her palm to the glass. This, Earth? He nodded. What's left of it? She stared, unmoving. Then, quietly, it sings. Cole turned slowly. What? She tapped her head, then her chest. In me, it sings. On the dark side of Luna, hidden inside the crater fortress called Hollow Reach, Alara Ken prepped the resistance team for insertion. She stood before a rough scraped table, displaying orbital scans and Vran heat signatures. 5 operatives stood beside her, one with a cybernetic lung, another with the burning brand of a Vran labor camp still on her neck. They've landed just outside Old Zurich, Alara said. No support fleet, no visible escort. One of the operatives snorted. A trap, maybe, Alara replied. But the signal was real. They brought the air, the human servers with her, the one who danced. The room fell quiet. Then we strike. One asked. Alara shook her head. We watch first. We listen. This isn't about revenge. It's about timing, and in the shadows, General Idris Harlan watched the feed with storm-cloud eyes. The Empress stood in what had once been a city. Now, it was only bone, broken towers, vitrified streets, scorched metal buried in dust. She inhaled deeply, not through lungs, but through her inner hive chambers, sensing memory, pain, echoes. Do you know what we feared most about your kind? She asked. Cole stood beside Kyrie, his feet in human soil for the first time in his life. No, he said. You remembered. Even after loss, even after slaughter, you turned grief into myths, into war, into music. She looked at the ruins. We silenced a species, but never its heartbeat. Kyrie pressed her hover cradle forward. Her hand brushed the blackened earth. She gasped, and for a moment, Cole thought he heard it too. Not real sound, but something older. A whisper in the bones of the world. What no one saw, not the Empress, not Cole, not even Kyrie, was the faint flicker in the soil as her hand touched it. A signal, buried decades ago in the Earth's crust. It had been waiting. Now it activated. A pulse, a beacon, a call, the seed of Earth's final defense. Hours later, the Empress allowed Kyrie and Cole a private walk through the ruins. She remained aboard the cruiser, meditating in her throne. Cole knelt in the rubble of an old plaza. The remains of a steel statue, melted and half-buried, jutted from the ground. He wiped away the dust. A plaque. He couldn't read the first half, but the last part survived. The day we stood, the day they bled, humanity forever. Kyrie looked at it. She pointed. Humans, fight. He nodded. Always. Dance too. He smiled. Both. Then the ground shook. Kyrie's hover cradle. Wine. Cole instinctively shielded her. From the earth, 6 shapes emerged, plated in stone gray armor, old earth tech, powered by fusion cells thought extinct. Sentinels, human-made, buried deep, forgotten, waiting for the right trigger. One step forward. Its voice scratched to life. Designate, Resistance Echo 9A. If you were Terran, state passphrase. Cole's mouth was dry. I don't know it. Kyrie touched his arm. Then she sang, 3 notes, a melody. They danced to, and the Sentinel's core glowed. Pathras accepted, Earth remembers. The Vran response was immediate. Aboard the Seraph's grasp, the Empress's throne screamed in alert. She saw the Sentinels rise from the soil. Ancient weapons, human weapons. The Mind Claw's warning echoed in her mind. Where humanity dances, fire follows. She activated full defensive protocols and issued her first command in 20 years to her warforges, ready the planetary cleanse. Cole knew at the moment the sky burned gold. Vran support cruisers, dropping in orbit. Heat signatures in the upper stratosphere. Run, he said, but Kira didn't move. Instead, she turned to the Sentinel. Help, save, she whispered. The Sentinel's head turned. Then, as if recognizing her, a hybrid of the Fallen and the Conqueror, it activated full combat mode. Turrets deployed. Fusion cores surged. Cole grabbed her hand. We have to move, but Kira looked up, tears in her alien eyes. If I die, she whispered. Don't let the song die too. Alara Ken's shuttle broke atmosphere at Mach 4. She saw the fire, the Sentinels, the Princess, and she knew. This was no longer just a dance. It was the first note of a war reborn. Earth didn't die. It slept, waiting for someone to remember the steps. The world roared. The Vran cleansing fleet began atmospheric breach, its plasma jets trailing gold across the dead sky. Within moments, the upper ruins of Old Zurich were wreathed in ozone, electromagnetic pulse, and the hollow scream of incoming kinetic rods. Cole Mercer held Kira in his arms, her hover cradle destroyed in the first tremor. Dust veiled everything, the Sentinels, the crumbling horizon, even the rising war. Somewhere, he could hear the low thrum of orbital weapons spinning up. This wasn't a punishment strike. This was eradication again. The Earth had risen, and the Vran had answered. But something else was rising too. The first human resistance drop shuttle broke through the smoke like a comet of rust and fire. Its underbelly tore open before landing, belching 5 armored soldiers in retrofitted exo-frames. At their head, Alara Ken, her face streaked with heat shield burns and purpose. She moved through the dust like a ghost of old Earth, ignoring the impressive shock troops that now rained from orbit. Cole met her eyes, disbelief, then recognition. You, he breathed. You're real, she replied, hoisting a plasma carbine, and she's the key. She pointed to Kira, the broken air now clutching Cole's arm, her face pale from strain. She activated the Sentinels. Alara continued, the code Yuta used. It wasn't just a melody. It was a trigger. Cole looked down at Kira, who blinked, confused. Why you, said. It was dance, she whispered. He knelt beside her. It was, he said, but it was also history. The song they had danced to, the one that had comforted her during the dark palace nights, wasn't just an old Terran tune. It was the failsafe anthem encoded into Earth's last defense systems. A song layered in frequencies only hybrid binaural minds like Kirai's could unlock. And now, the Earth had answered. Above them, in low orbit, the Empress watched from her command throne, face frozen in pale fury. The Mind Claw's voice rang through her inner cortex. You feared your daughter's defect, but you made her human. You planted the seed. Her hands clenched on the throne's edge. She is mine, she hissed. No, the Mind Claw replied. She is theirs now. The Sentinels, 7 now fully awakened, formed a perimeter around Cole, Kira, and the Resistance fighters. Each one towered like a god from humanity's last myth. Their armor bore names etched in multiple languages: valor, memory, mercy, echo, unity, grief, fire, and from their chests, light pulsed, in sync with Kirai's breath. She's bonded, Alara muttered. They're listening to her, and she's listening to us, Cole said. Heart hammering. She's always been. Explosions rippled across the horizon. The first Vran dropships landed, their sides erupting open, disgorging insectal infantry and atmosphere disruptors. The Earth cracked, but the Sentinels didn't flinch. They marched. With a grinding roar, they opened fire. Plasma beams laced with ancient Terran tech, some older than Cole himself. The Vran had expected a funeral. They got a resurrection. Within the storm, Kira began to sing again. Not words, tone, the melody. Her voice echoed strangely across the battlefield. Amplified by Sentinel audio networks, every note lit up the Earth's surface, revealing buried conduits, sealed bunkers, hidden caches the Dominion thought had long been turned to dust. But Earth had remembered. and so had the Resistance. All units, Alara called into comms. Code phrase, Echo Waltz, launch now. Across the solar system, from asteroid hideouts to icy moons. Sleeping Resistance cells received the signal and rose. 1,000 lights ignited in the dark, and for the first time since the fall, humanity moved in concert. On the field, Cole held Kirai's trembling body. Can you keep going? She nodded. Barely. Hurts? She whispered. But still here. He held her tighter. Good. He whispered. So am I. A Vrand strike drone broke through the upper canopy. Cole turned to slow and threw himself over Kirai, but the blast never came. Instead, a blur of steel and scars landed in front of them. Idris Harlan, the general, still alive, still fighting. He unloaded a full plasma shell into the drone, then turned to Cole. You the server? Cole nodded. You're the reason Earth's not dead. Idris said, voice low. Let's finish what you started. But above, the Empress made her final move. If she couldn't reclaim her daughter, she would erase her legacy. She activated the Soul Flare, an ancient weapon built into the Vrand fleet during the conquest. A solar destabilizer. One push, and the sun would begin to collapse, slowly, then completely. She whispered to herself as the ignition key slid into her throne. They will not win. I will not be changed by them. But before the weapon fired, something moved in her mind. A voice, not human, not alien, her daughter. Inside her mind, through old bonds, long severed, Kirai's song had reached her, and the Empress felt something crack, a memory, a moment. Holding her newborn daughter in the cold medical chamber, the first time Kirai had grasped her finger, she had smiled then, just like now. The Empress trembled. Her hand hovered above the ignition, but for the first time in her life she hesitated. On the ground, the battle reached its crescendo, and in the chaos, with fire raining from the sky, Cole and Kirai stood in the ashes of their ancestors, together, alive. Even if the sun burned out, they would remember how she danced in its light one last time. The sky had turned amber, not from sunset, but from the charged tremors of plasma discharge, flare distortion, and crumbling orbital debris. What remained of the Zurich ruins now lay buried under the firestorm of Earth's first true uprising in decades. But Cole Mercer had no time to watch the war. His arms ached, his lungs burned, yet he kept his body wrapped around Princess Kirai, shielding her from falling wreckage and shrapnel with the desperation only a human could feel. For someone they'd sworn to protect, she was losing strength her hybrid mind never designed for. The ancient Terran control signals now flowing through her had begun to fracture under the strain. Every sentinel she commanded fed back into her body, and she would burn out soon. Kirai, he whispered, brushing soot from her cheek. You have to stop singing. No, she gasped, voice like ash. They need me. You need me. He looked into her eyes and saw something terrifying. Not pain, not fear, conviction. The kind that changed empires. Alara Ken knelt behind a shattered monorail spine, her carbine nearly out of charge. To her left, General Idris Harlan coordinated the last of the Earthbound resistance through cracked voice links. They were pinned. Half their exo-troopers were dead. The sentinels were falling, one by one, fighting with unmatched rage, but overwhelmed by Vrand tanks and sonic drones that had arrived through Quantum Fold minutes ago. And still, the song persisted. Alara turned her cracked visor toward the epicenter, toward her. Kirai was glowing, not metaphorically. Her veins shone like starlight. Neural filaments stretched from her skin to the remaining sentinels, threading them like puppets through ancient Terran will. Cole knelt beside her like a knight beside his queen. I didn't believe it, Alara muttered, half in awe. I thought she was just a liability. Harlan didn't look away from the battle. She's the weapon, he said, and the message. Aboard the Vrand fleet above, the Empress knelt alone in her chamber. For the first time in recorded Vrand history, kneeling. She hadn't touched the ignition switch for the soul flare, because her daughter's voice still echoed in her mind, not through words, but through memory, the notes, the movements, the strange, haunting rhythm of Terran defiance. Her generals called for orders. Her fleets demanded instruction, but she did not speak. Instead, she remembered the girl they tried to discard, the shame of the court, the stuttering hybrid. She had become the center of the war, the soul of it, and in that silence, the Empress, feared, revered, obeyed. across the galaxies, wept. On the ground, Cole saw the last sentinel fall. It collapsed in front of them with a groan of twisting alloys and expired core light. Its death sent a backlash through Kirai's nervous system. Her body spasmed as she crumpled forward in his arms. No, 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 stay with me, Cole pleaded, voice cracking. Her lips were pale, but her eyes flickered open. W worth it, she whispered. He shook his head. We're not done. You danced W with me when no one did. She reached for his hand. That was enough. The moment shattered him. All the war, all the fury, and at the center of it all, this girl, once discarded like a broken tool, had become the fuse that lit Earth's fire. He clutched her hand. Don't say goodbye. Not yet. She smiled weakly. Not goodbye. Then came the final signal. A piercing beam from deep orbit tore through the clouds, not from the Ran, from Earth. Or rather, what was beneath it? The last of the buried AI cores, ancient, proto-sentient weapons left offline after the fall, activated. In response to Kirai's final harmonic surge, they rose from the mantle like titanic blades. One struck the Vrangraf cruiser dead on. Another slammed into the Mind Claw's command vessel, and suddenly the Vran began to retreat. Too late. Humanity, thought extinct, had revealed its final trick, not brute strength, not sheer numbers, but memory. They had buried their miracles in sorrow and waited. The Empress watched as her fleet disintegrated in orbit, not because she gave the order, because her daughter had. She did not scream. She did not flee. She stood and lowered her crown to the floor of her chamber. In the ashes of Zurich, Cole, Mercer held Kirai's body as the dust settled. She was unconscious now, barely breathing, but alive. Above them, the sky was clearing. No ships, no weapons, just stars. Cole, Alara said softly, stepping beside him. He didn't look away. She saved us. She changed us, Alara corrected. They stood in silence as more resistance shuttles landed, as old flags were raised, as Earth exhaled. For the first time in 3 decades, far away, in the heart of Rand space, transmissions began to ripple outward. They weren't orders. They were recordings of a human boy and a hybrid girl dancing. The war didn't end with a weapon. It ended with a hand reaching through everything we lost. They gathered in silence where the dust still floated like ghosts over old Earth. Soldiers, civilians, resistance remnants, children who had only heard Earth described in broken stories. They came from bunkers, from orbiting ruins, from moons lit by artificial suns. Drawn by a message that had spread faster than any weapon, the princess dances. The Empress has knelt. The heart of Earth still beats. Cole Mercer stood at the center of it all, holding Kirai in his arms, her pulse faint but steady. Her body was laced with neural scars, her eyes closed, but she had not died. Not when her people abandoned her, not when the Dominion turned the sky to flame, and not when her own power nearly consumed her. She had survived, and the galaxy saw it. Above, the last Rand dreadnought still circled, not attacking, not fleeing, watching. The Empress had issued no further commands. The soul flare had not been fired. Instead, she appeared, descending from her personal chamber in a biofold skiff. She landed alone, wrapped not in armor, but in robes of morning silk. No guards, no weapons, only her, sovereign of a dominion spanning 500 systems, walking across the shattered bones of Earth, toward her daughter, toward the human who had danced with her. Cole stood as the Empress approached. His face was bruised, his uniform torn, and yet he met her eyes, the same eyes that had sentenced entire colonies to fire. He didn't bow. The Empress looked at Kirai, unconscious, trembling in his arms, her lips parted, but no sound came. Something inside her, ancient, unspoken, broke. Then she did something no one in the galaxy had ever seen. She knelt. The galaxy watched it through resistance feeds and hidden Dominion channels alike. The Empress of the Ran knelt before a human, before her broken daughter, and spoke not as ruler, but as mother. She was never meant to live, she said softly, her voice stripped of power. They told me she was defective, an error of breeding, a wound to our purity. Cole didn't speak. I believed them. I left her in silence. I buried her in tradition. She reached out, but didn't touch. And you, a server, a fragment of a dead world. You made her dance, Her voice trembled. You taught her to be. Cole's voice, when it came, was quiet. She taught me too. The Empress looked around, at the soldiers who now lowered their weapons, at the resistance troops who waited, unsure whether peace or slaughter would follow, then back to her daughter, whose chest still rose and fell in shallow breath. She carries the spark, the Empress whispered, the bridge between what we are and what we must become. Then, without ceremony, she stood and raised both hands. A global transmission burst across all known channels, Ran and Terran alike. No encryption, no warnings, just truth. Let this be the end. Let her stand. Let the broken rise. Let my daughter's name be remembered, not as shame, but as beginning. Then she looked to Cole. And yours? He hesitated, then spoke, clearly. Cole Mercer, son of no one. I was born on a mining skiff 2 years after it fell. I was taught to serve, to bow, to survive. He looked down at Kire, and she reminded me how to live. The galaxy changed in that moment, not from force, not from conquest, from witnessing. Some Vran surrendered, others wept. A few destroyed themselves in fury, but many listened. The Empress issued her final decree as ruler of the Dominion. She abdicated. Power passed not to generals, but to her daughter, half human, half Ran, and still unconscious in a human's arms. Later that night, beneath a sky filled not with warships, but with stars, the first true celebration on Earth in decades began. No speeches, no banners, just firelight and music. The old Terran frequencies, once buried in satellites, corrupted, hidden, had been restored. Drones projected soft melodies across the ruined plazas. Survivors stepped on fractured stone floors and danced. Not perfectly, not gracefully, but freely. Cole sat beside Kire as the music drifted. Her eyes fluttered open, and he was there. The moment she did, you made it, he whispered. She smiled faintly. You, too. He offered his hand. She stared at it, then slowly, shakily, placed hers in his. He helped her stand, and together, in front of humans and aliens alike, they stepped forward, not into battle, but into rhythm, into legacy. The galaxy didn't remember dates, or treaties, or weapons. It remembered the dance of a forgotten servant and a broken girl, and the night Earth taught the stars what it meant to hope. They called it the war that ended in a waltz, but we knew better. It ended in a choice. Years passed, not many, just enough for the galaxy to take a breath. Earth never fully healed, but it never burned again. The scars stayed, so did the wreckage, the monuments, the silence, but life returned. Vines cracked through old blast craters. Oxygen generators fed into the fractured atmosphere. Children ran barefoot over soil that once bore the weight of empires. And in the center of it all, where the Zurich ruins once stood, was a new structure. Not a palace, not a command tower, a circular hall with no doors, no guards, just a floor, a dance floor, polished stone, open to the sky. And in the center, to names carved in both Terran and Vran glyphs, Cole Mercer Kire Velsroth. Beneath the names, a phrase that needed no translation, we remembered. Kire lived. Her nervous system would never fully recover, not after channeling Earth's final defense network. Through her body, she walked with braces now. Sometimes she couldn't speak, but she smiled more than she ever had before. She ruled nothing and everything. She declined the throne her mother offered. Instead, she helped build something else. Not a government, not a rebellion, a union of ex-slaves and ex-generals, of human and Vran, of broken things stitched together by memory. The Empress disappeared, leaving no successor, no palace, just a message. Let her lead in her own way. I was the past. She is the bridge. Cole never left Kirai's side. He could have returned to the resistance, could have faded into myth, but instead, he stayed in the ruins, grew a garden from Terran seed, repaired old music drones, laughed more, spoke less, loved quietly. He was no hero. He was just the first to see her. That was enough. The galaxy debated for decades how it all began. Some said it was the Empress's guilt, others, the resurgence of Earth's sentinels. But those who knew, the ones who survived it, felt it, they all said the same thing. It began with a dance, a small one, in a cold palace, between a servant and a girl everyone had forgotten. And it changed everything, because that dance wasn't defiance. It was recognition. Alara Ken led the Union's defense corps for years. She helped design the cross-species peace charters, helped write the Charter of Legacy, the only founding document in galactic history to begin with a poem. Not a law. We carry no crown, no planet, no perfection. We carry stories, and from them, we rise. When she died, her ashes were scattered over the dance floor in Zurich, a place where, she said, the war unbroke. General Idris Harlan vanished during an expedition into Rand space. Some say he died. Others say he went to finish something, maybe find others still burning, with vengeance. Maybe to remind them that Earth didn't rise because of hate. It rose because of remembrance. His final transmission was only one line. The stars remember her name, and the Vran, they fractured. But they didn't vanish. Some joined the Union. Some stayed on their worlds, quiet and watching. But none forgot what they saw: a kneeling empress, a singing daughter, and a human boy who never bowed. On the 10th anniversary of the Day of Ash and Song, a gathering formed on Earth. Not formal, not grand, just people. They stood barefoot on the cold stone of the Zurich Memorial. Cole was there, older now, gray at his temples, his hands calloused from rebuilding things that mattered. Kiri was beside him. She held his hand. When the music began, soft, low, a blend of Terrence string and Vran harmonic pulse, she leaned close and whispered, "SH, shall we?" He smiled. They stepped into the center and danced. No longer alone. Around them, others joined. Humans, Vran, hybrids, children. The dance floor vanished beneath feet and laughter and life. And somewhere, far beyond stars and time, the ruins of old warships and shattered fleets faded into dust. But the dance remained. That day, the galaxy learned what it means to be human. Not power, not pride, but the courage to take a hand when the world tells you not to, and move, together, into the light. The end.